and Peter in Harmony, Rhode Island. Hey, Peter, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Hey, Tom. So I became a precinct committee person, but not the way you advised us to. I was just basically appearing at the State House and advocating for sick days bills and early voting bills. And my state rep kept noticing it, so he just invited me to join in the town precinct committee. So I did.
Wow, is that great, Peter?
Yeah. So last week we had a vote for a new town chair, and it was
For a new what chair?
Town chairman.
Oh, so the equivalent of a mayor kind of thing, or head of the city council?
Yes, that's right. And we had two progressive candidates, and I was the youngest person. We had about 46 people. I was, most people are over 60. I'm only 29. So we had a vote for two progressive candidates for the town chair and the vice chair. And in both instances, they lost 17 to 29 and 18 to 28. And we're guessing the reason was because most of the people there were the old guard, the old Democratic guard. And when the first progressive candidate lost the first position, the town chair, and he was nominated for the vice chair, he just withdrew. So I'm wondering why he did that. Maybe he got dismayed by the results, but he had an impressive CV. He has a PhD. BA in political science. He's a professor. He has a vast political experience, political activism. And the guys who ran against him were just some older guys named Anthony. I'm not making this up. And they had no introduction. There was no introduction for their CV or their political experience, nothing like that. But they won handedly. So now I'm wondering, well, what do we do now? If it looks like we have to wait a decade or something to be able to take over the Democratic Party, at least where I live, unless I'm able to recruit more youngsters. But it's tough. It's not just enough to, go and vote. I guess we need to increase the turnout for the younger people. But how do I get them involved when most people that I know don't really care about politics? So I'm just very, depressing.
I have seen this in politics, in like governmental politics. I've also seen this. I was, when we lived in Portland, we lived in a floating home that was owned by the community. I mean, the individual houses were individually owned, but the marina structure and everything was community owned. So there was basically the equivalent of a homeowners association, and I was on the board for 2 years. And I've seen the same thing in that kind of an environment. And I think it's just kind of a dimension of human nature that there had been people who were on that board for 15 years, and they just wanted to do things the way that they always did them, which by and large, well, on a few occasions, inured more benefit to the longtime members than to the short-term members, or in the past, it inured substantial benefit to what are now the long-term members, and they were kind of hanging on to hold on to their privilege, as it were. And it produced some conflict, but it also, they were also good people who were really committed. And you see the same thing in politics. I think that probably the other people didn't need an introduction because they'd done their political homework. They had gone around and met everybody, introduced themselves. Everybody knew who they were. I'm guessing, Peter. This is how it typically plays out. And you guys just got politically played. And so there's two steps to overcoming that. Number one is to start playing the political game politically. That is to show up at the meetings, get to know people, get to know them personally. Start building bridges between progressives and the old guard, as it were, in your local party organization. And number two, there's a certain element of there are some people who are just so stuck in the way that they've always done things and their particular worldview that you're just going to have to wait until they move out of the way, whether they die off or whether they just retire or just decide, hey, this isn't worth the trouble. But the bottom line, I think, is that if you persist and if you can bring more and more people into the process, the odds are it's not going to take a decade. I hope that's encouraging, Peter.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, good luck. And good on you for participating. That's step one. We're all in this culture kind of addicted to instant gratification. It rarely happens in politics. It takes time. And I'm so pleased, Peter, that you're part of the process. We need people like you in it. Thank you so much for the call.